It was December the 7th, 1941, on a Sunday morning. I was sitting listening to the radio. They broke in and said Pearl Harbor had been bombed by the Japanese. I, like most people, didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was. So they finally told me where Pearl Harbor was. So like I say, I was only 15 years old. I didn't think it'd ever affect me that much. But before I knew it, I was 18 years old. I was 18 February the 24th, 1944. 2 months later, I was in service. Went to Fort Bragg, was inducted, sent to Camp Bland in Florida. Took 16 weeks of basic training. Went to Camp McCall, Wisconsin. And on Thanksgiving Day of 1944, I boarded the ship for Europe. We didn't know where we was going. They didn't tell us till we got halfway across. So we landed at Bournemouth, England, a southern resort equivalent to our Miami of Florida. We stayed there to run after Christmas and left for Le Havre, France, and went from there to the Battle of the Bulge. And so we relieved another division, then we went to Luxembourg. From then on, we went into the Siegfried Line. And about March, they started letting guys one at a time in the company get a pass right off the front lines. You had a choice of Brussels, Paris, or London. So I took 4 days in Paris and had to go right back on the front lines again. So at that time, the war was winding down. The still war was going on by that time, but it wasn't that severe. And we started taking a lot of prisoners everywhere we went. We knew it wouldn't be long till the war would be over then. And the war was over a little later in April. So in the meantime, they put us on displaced persons camps, guarding them, looking after them. Before we did that for about a month. Then, to my disbelief, they said we were going home. We were waiting to go to the Pacific. In the meantime, they dropped an atomic bomb in the Pacific. Right before we left to go to the Pacific, our orders changed. We got to go home after they dropped the bomb, the third bomb. And I was very, very happy. And I got home, and I was about the happiest person in the world, I guess. I knew a little later I'd be getting a discharge.
Could you tell us about some of the things like during the war, what it was about, and about all the things that were happening during the war and what you were, and some of the things?
I was a machine gunner, 30 caliber water coup, the same type they used in World War I. It didn't fire as fast as a German machine gun, but it was very accurate. You could pinpoint a target by going up a click, down a click, right a click, left a click. You just about drop something in their pocket. You had every third shell would be a tracer. That's where you could see it glowed, lit up. That's where you could see what you was hidden. And it just looked like a stream of fire with that every third tracer glowing like that. And that's what we done mostly, was infantry. Went right ahead of us, and we sat down where we could get them cover and fire and shoot over their heads, like we was on a hill and they was going down the valley. They take towns, and we'd give them cover and fire like that. One person would carry the tripod, one the ammo you strapped on your back with a board with straps on it, and the ammo was on it. 2 cases of ammo was on it, and the other one carried the machine gun. And when you had to mount the gun, one set one down, and we mounted that, and you'd be ready to fire in a matter of seconds. So that's what I done.
Can you tell us
In the
about,
meantime, they were actually machine guns. They were always catching a lot of mortar fire and artillery fire. So I had my helmet looked like it'd been hit with a hammer all over it. Where you dug down and shrapnel hit your helmet, you know. Well, if you hadn't been dug down, why it'd wiped you out. See, blast goes up like that. Then you hit the ground. If it don't hit right on you, you're all right. You had 88s coming in. You could hear they had a screaming sound, and you got to where you could tell exactly where they was going. If it got to a certain level, start fading away, you knew it's okay. If it got louder and louder, started screaming in, you know it was coming close. You hit the ground. You really hit the ground. You stayed there. Sometimes it knocked the tops of trees out and everything else all around you.
could you tell us about your foxholes and where you stayed during that time?
Well, we had to dig the gun in every time. And especially at night, we'd have one on the gun hole. That's the squad had one on the gun all the time, and the rest of them slept. After you spent two hours on the gun, you'd go wake the next man. He'd spend 2 hours, you'd wake him up until it come around your turn again.
Let's see, could you tell us some,
At night, when you would be on the gun, watching for something, seemed like about every tree in the distance would move. You'd think it might be somebody. It seemed like you'd be watching that tree and it seemed like it'd move. Near the end of the war, when we knew it was about over, it wasn't over. But we have met hundreds of German troops lined up with their commanding officer in front, walking right toward us to give up. We just motioned them on to the rear. We didn't have time to fool with them. Most of the time the commander would be a general or something. They didn't want to be captured by the Russians.
what would the Russians have done to them probably?
They treated them very, very mean for the simple reason the Germans treated them that way. So they were very afraid of the Russians. They knew they'd take their anger out on them, reprisal.